Philly, 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 what's going on? We are back and better for episode 3 of Drunk on Ice. I'm here. My name is Don. I'm here with Jason, and we are about ready to give you some fast hitting, hard checking hockey action. So, Jason, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're
Back in orange and black.
back in black.
Back in orange and
We're how have you been?
Well, I've been struggling, man. Been struggling. I
Okay.
know you and I obviously talk off air a lot, and I struggle with mental illness, and last couple of days have been a real struggle for me. Um, I guess my word of advice is that I'm here for people. My DMs are always open. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not
Good.
embarrassed. This interaction actually helps me. So I'm glad we're doing the show because,
Hmm.
I mean, it's very easy to, for someone in my shoes, this is say, I don't want to do the show tonight. Nah, I can't do it.
I hear you.
But, you know, staying busy and doing what I enjoy is actually what helps me. So, and
Yeah.
there's nothing I enjoy more than doing podcasts. I mean, obviously, listen, you and I, we both have day jobs. You're a teacher. I work
Yep.
retail. But obviously, this is our passion, both of us.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we both have, obviously, we're both on. We both have our own show that we do, and then this is a kind
Right.
of collaboration together. And I have fun doing it all. So I'm glad to be here with you tonight. Talk shop.
Yeah.
Get
I
into
mean,
some.
listen, we've talked a lot, on and off. And I know you've touched base on your sports and metal show. We were actually talking about this on Drunk on Broad on Tuesday night, um, about the importance of mental health. So, the thing that I would stress to people right off the bat is, to reach out. Don't feel like there's not a spot. There's always a spot for someone to kind of help out, whether that's a family member, whether that's someone interact with on social media. Uh, but definitely make sure that you're reaching out for any kind of help, anything that you need. You know, just mental health is important. You got to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. So, um, just reach out. It's one of the things that we're talking about tonight, and just thought it was important to kind of start off with that, and make sure that we're making sure our heads are in the right places, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be transparent, and it's
Yeah.
good to talk about, an important subject that not enough people talk about. And unfortunately, and like a lot of other things, kind of mental illness gets stigmatized, and I think it's important for people like myself and people that struggle. The more people that come out and talk about it, the more it gets brought to the forefront, and then the more people can understand. And honestly, I say this all the time. If I can just help one other person that's struggling right now that doesn't want to speak up or is suffering in silence, if I could just help one person,
So
I'm doing my job. And honestly, helping somebody else is helping me, because when
yeah,
I know that I'm able to help somebody else, it kind of gives you, like, it's hard to explain, but it kind of releases, like, whenever you do something good for somebody, it releases like dopamine in your system, and it actually makes you feel better.
oh
And
yeah, oh
just
yeah. I mean,
talking about this right now is making me feel better. Like, it's crazy, but
yeah,
it's true. Like, it really is.
yeah. I mean,
And
I've seen it firsthand. With I'm a teacher, so I'm an eighth grade teacher, so I'm in that weird, funky middle school transition period. So we've got, right now, I mean, I got a bunch of kids that are struggling with stuff, coming back, being at home for 18 months and coming back and being back in the building with everybody. And that, to go from being by yourself on a computer, staring at a screen, to now having to interact and work and go from class to class. Like, it sounds kind of like monotonous, but you do anything for a certain period of time, and you kind of get used to that lifestyle. But I see I feel like it's important, that first piece to talk about with the kids was advocacy, right? Advocate for yourself. Even if it's sending an email to somebody to say, hey, listen, I need to talk. When do you have time? Just showing them those little outlets of like different ways that they can reach out. I would suggest that to anybody, right? Send an email to somebody, send a DM to somebody, send a text. That slight interaction, could be the difference between, it could make the difference in someone's day. So, mental health, uberly important. I think with that, let's, we can dive right in. Before we get any further, I have to say some of the stuff that this sponsor, our sponsor, La Terrain watches, you can visit them at la-terrain.com and use the promo code DOB. They have some of the coolest stuff. The craftsmanship is incredible. The look, some of the looks are like very, very classy, but they're not crazy expensive. I saw them put out, I had retweeted something today that they had put out about these new sunglasses that they have. Super sharp stuff. So if you haven't checked them out, check them out.
And I want to add in real quick. Don't forget, it's Christmas time coming. So it makes a great gift. I mean, honestly, I'm going to buy one for myself because I need a watch. And it's like, unfortunately, I'm going to use the S&M code.
Hey, listen, right? You got to take care of number one, right?
There you go. But yes, these watches are phenomenal. Like Don just said, check them out.
It's a made in the USA product, if that helps.
Definitely.
If that helps persuade anybody at all.
I'm sure it does, because you know how some people are.
Hey, listen, it's all good stuff. So, with that, we're gonna jump right into some of the biggest news in the NHL right now. The trade that everybody was kind of waiting on to happen finally went down in the middle of the night last night. At one point last week, I saw, when we had Mike on from Fired Up last week, we were talking about, a couple of teams that were in play. We talked about Calgary and Vegas. Turns out he ends up in Vegas. What are your thoughts?
I mean, first and foremost, he goes from one of the worst teams in the NHL to one of the best. So for Jack Eichel, it's a win-win.
I mean, it's all win. I mean, he scored 21 on blackjack, right? He gets to, I saw the one thing I saw on social media today was something in the neighborhood of like, it seems like Vegas has kind of gotten the upper hand in, being able to kind of manipulate some transactions and really kind of they built that expansion team to win right away. They built it with guys that they knew they were going to be able to win now. They had Marc-Andre Fleury in that. They built it very differently than Seattle built their team this year. But I mean, when he's healthy, that team is going to be sick.
I mean, you mentioned it. Not only did they build the team to win now, obviously now they've built it to win in the future and have sustained success. And, I think it's kind of ironic that Jack Eichel is now going to be playing in the same division as Connor McDavid, who is basically, 1A to his 1B. Like, they were both in the same draft class. Obviously, Connor McDavid's generational. But right. Jack Eichel, when he's healthy, is a superstar. And Yeah, I mean, honestly, we talked about this last week. Well, it was 2 weeks ago, but we talked about it when, on the show with Mike that, obviously, we were kind of like waiting for the shoe to drop. It was like almost like, dude, what is Buffalo doing? But yet, like, obviously, we know he was not going to play in Buffalo. We knew that.
No.
So, unfortunately for Buffalo, they had to kind of take the best deal that they could get. Now, I'm not discounting what they got because, honest to God, like the players that they did get, and obviously I'll let you get into that in a little,
Yeah.
But I mean, to be able to add Jack Eichel to a team that's already, a top 5 NHL team, because obviously I think they're in the top 5.
Right.
I mean, every year that they contend, and like you said, they were just built differently. But to be able to add Jack Eichel, and really not give up, like they didn't give up like any, of their, primo superstar talent. They gave up. I mean,
so Peyton Cribbs, who's was a 2019 first round pick. He was a 17th overall pick. I mean,
nice piece.
For what it's worth, he's the top ranked prospect in their system. I didn't do a deep dive into where that ranks in the NHL. And the other guy that they got was a 2014 pick. He's got 255 games and 61 goals.
Alex Tuch, right?
Yeah, but hasn't played this year because of a shoulder injury. I mean, they also got they got a top 10 protected first round pick and a 2023 second round pick. Like, tell me, like that doesn't even seem like it would fly on the most liberal of trade machines. It just I can't see how that blows me away that's the best offer they got.
I mean, I'm not like a, an analyst or, and I'm not one of these guys that like studies like, the minors that well. I mean, my friend Samantha, she covers, the Phantoms.
The Phantoms, yeah.
She would know probably a lot more about, these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of have to agree with you. Like it doesn't seem like a needle moving trade that you would think that you could get for Jack Eichel. But then again, once again, I don't know how many teams were prepared to trade for him because obviously we heard Calgary's floated around and they were talking about Matthew Tkachuk. But I honest to God don't think that was ever really a real offer. I kind of believe that was kind of one of those offers where the agents kind of put that out there to try to drive as much price up that they could with Vegas.
With Vegas.
Being that
could be.
Vegas was really the only team in on him other than, like I said, there was a couple other teams that were kind of scratching that, I know the Rangers had been kind of thinking about it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think Buffalo's at the point now where like they're so bad anyway that it's like, okay, I think it was a distraction that they really needed to get rid of. So
yeah,
it's not like it's terrible, but I agree with you. It doesn't seem on the surface to be the kind of trade that you would be like, wow, we kind of won this trade.
I mean, not to make a cross sports reference, but it seems very Ben Simmons-esque.
Oh no!
Right? Like minus the reality of the injury, right? It just seems like the Sixers are probably going to be in a similar spot where they're going to. I mean, listen, Daryl Morey is playing hardball with anybody and everybody from Ben Simmons to everybody at Clutch Sports. But I feel like we're going to feel the same way about that trade when that trade goes down.
Dude, you're spot on. Like, honestly, I mean, it's kind of similar because, Jack Eichel, star player, Ben Simmons, capable of being a star player, but not really, hasn't put it all together.
In terms of the league, he's thought of as a star player. You've got a guy who's on the first, he's a first team defensive player. He's a multiple year all-star. yada yada yada. Yes, we know all of his downfalls, but I feel like I'm gonna feel like the same way that Buffalo fans are feeling right now. I feel like we're gonna. It prepared me for what we might end up getting back.
So we're gonna feel
Just
that same burn, is what you're getting
oh
at.
yeah, oh absolutely, absolutely. I feel like that burn is, but that is going. It's going to allow them to move that needle really well into propelling them into the top echelon of the West. It's
I,
going to allow them to compete with the Edmontons and the Calgarys that are really kind of moving the needle at the top of the West.
yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see, you know, that rivalry get
Uh-huh.
reunited with, obviously with Edmonton, McDavid, and Eichel. That's really going to be cool.
And Mike brings up a really good point. Right there, because of now the guys they have on the roster, they're going to have to be, he's right. And I'm just going to quote tweet it, right? They're going to have to be super creative with the cap to
Well,
be able to move some salary.
well, that's 100% accurate. I actually saw a tweet today. I'm not sure who the guy was. It was somebody kind of plugged in that kind of did like a thread on that and was
Okay.
kind of mentioning all the different pieces that will have to move and kind of get shuffled once each player comes back. And it was actually it was like seven like subheadings in the thread.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of got to the point where the bottom line that came from it was that at the end of this all, they're going to have to move another piece if they want to keep, all the other guys. Like, because
Okay.
somebody else is going to move it. Now, obviously, they have time. It's not a rush because he's going to get the surgery. I believe either this week or the end next week. I didn't
Yeah,
see an
I heard
exact
something
date,
similar.
but I heard he's definitely moving forward with the surgery. And I think if I'm not mistaken, they said it was like a 3 month recovery time.
Yeah.
You're talking 3 months from now. That would bring us to what? Like we're already in November, so you're talking
February,
December,
beginning of
January,
March.
end of February. So you're talking if he does come back healthy, you're going to talking about kind of getting close to. Is that around the Olympics or is that after the Olympics?
Nah,
The
I
Olympics
think
are later this year, right?
yeah, they're later. But it's going to be in that like late February,
Range.
early March time period.
So they
You
have
know, but,
time.
but they have time, but that's going to be it when he comes back to play. It's going to feel very similar to adding a piece at the trade deadline,
Yeah, it's
right?
very,
They're just adding it 4 months in
later.
advance. But I look at and Mike brings up this about Krebs, and you know he had the injury going into the draft, so that kind of pushed him later on into the back in, I won't say the back, that middle half of the draft at 17. I don't know. I just felt very very underwhelmed
Well,
by what that return was.
well, let's face it. Buffalo's in full rebuild, so obviously
Correct.
they're doing what they have to do. They're adding a lot of young talent. They still have some good young talent already in the team too. I mean,
Right.
they drafted Rasmus Dahlin, and obviously he's young, but he's
Right.
projected to be one of those top five defensemen, moving forward in
Correct.
the league. So, obviously they still have more moves to make, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they're at least, like I said, at least they got rid of, in their mind, the headache. So it's
Right.
kind of like when the Sixers do get rid of Simmons, yeah, we're going to have that feeling of like, damn, that we didn't get what we should get, but yet we're going to be able to say, you know what, we're moving on from him and not having to deal with all this nonsense. So
Right.
either way, obviously, we're not going to know until long term if it helped Buffalo. But obviously, right now it's helping them because it's getting rid of that distraction. So.
Right. Well, with that, we're going to transition into.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup! The Flyers win the Stanley Cup!
So, in terms of the hometown team, while in between episodes, 2 and 3, they had 5 games. What were your initial thoughts? So just to recap, they lost 4-2 to the Panthers, and then they went out west. They beat the Oilers 5-3. They beat the Canucks 2-1. They lost to the Flames 4-0, and then they came home and won 3-0 against the Coyotes. What's your biggest takeaway from their play over the course of the last 5 games?
I mean, honestly, when we did our debut show, we kind of gave our predictions, and we both kind of gave where we thought the Flyers were going to kind of finish. And I got to be honest with you, like at this point in time, I did not see the Flyers, playing this well. Like I'm pleasantly surprised so far at how they're playing. Now let's not get ahead of ourselves and say that they're playing great, because there's a lot of holes I still see in their game. Obviously, we talked about how tough this division is. I mean, in the Metropolitan right now, they're right exactly where I kind of predicted them. I predicted
they're right in the middle,
and that's where they're at. But if you're asking me about the last 5 games sample size where I'm at, I mean, I got to be honest. If you were going to tell me that they were going to go on the road and win 2 out of 3, and one of those games being beating Connor McDavid,
right?
I would have told you, I didn't think that was going to happen, because honestly, I thought they'd probably go 1-2.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, on the last show we were talking about, like, I thought they would be like 1-1-1. You were saying 1-2. The fact that they came back from that West Coast swing with 4 points was incredible, and to win the way that they did in those first 2 games, the game against the Oilers with McDavid is super exciting. They go back and forth with them. They end up winning 5-3. Can we talk about McDavid for a hot minute? He is insane. The pace of the game was up like 10 notches.
I mean, Mike talked about how he watches every game. He got the package, and he watches all those Western games because of McDavid. Like, this guy is a stud. I mean, it's literally kind of like watching when I was young, watching Gretzky. I mean, he's just that.
Yes.
He's just that much better than everybody else. Like, it's like watching, like, I don't know. It's like in basketball, like watching Michael Jordan or
Yeah.
It really is like seeing a guy at the top of his game, in his era, like that.
Oh, yeah.
When you see that night in and night out, geez, I'm freaking jealous as shit. Like, I wish I was living in Edmonton and I could say I was an Edmonton fan, right?
I don't know if I wish I was living in Edmonton.
Well, maybe not the weather, but my point is, yes,
to be able to see that 41 nights a year. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, kind of getting back to the point of what you said, like, I was pleasantly surprised at the way that they kind of finished. Obviously they went 3-2 in the 5 games. Now, the Calgary game where they got shut out, although they played pretty much a shitty game minus the first period, because the first period was kind of like weird. It was like,
it was a little funky.
Like the shots were like 4-2, and it was almost like it had that feel. Like, I actually heard someone say it kind of reminded them of like back in the day with the Devils in the Trap. Like, the neutral zone was just
absolutely,
like in that game. And I remember watching it, and I was kind of like, man, what's going on here? But then obviously, the second kind of their wheels came off, and it was just became really sloppy. But what I do want to say about Calgary is that it's kind of like we went up against the buzzsaw, because Calgary, to me, has been, talk about surprise teams. Calgary is playing out of their mind. Like, I believe at that point when they had beat the Flyers, I don't know what they've done their last game or so, but when they had beat the Flyers, I believe they had won 6. I think they were 6-0, or I may be wrong on that. Don't quote me, but
no,
they had won 5 games against the Metropolitan.
Yes,
So
they're 6-1-2 on the season.
Okay, so I think they were 6. I think they just lost their first game.
Correct.
So you're talking about, like, it's easy to say, like, oh, well, the Flyers just shit the bed, but they also went up against a team that's playing top level hockey. Not to mention the guy behind the pipes. I mean, between the pipes. Let's talk about him a little bit. Markstrom, the guy has 3 shutouts already. I mean, that guy, and I had kind of been talking about him, I think, on our debut show. I remember he came out and, like, beat Edmonton. I think Mike actually mentioned it too.
Yeah.
He beat Edmonton in that series, or not Edmonton, maybe it was the Blues, the year after the Blues won the Cup. Whatever team he was on, kind of beat them in the first round. And he's a goalie that's kind of been playing, like, under the radar. Like, he doesn't get a lot of name notoriety, but he's a stud. And so, but like I said, the Flyers played bad in that game. Let's not kid ourselves. But in the same token, you went up against a team like that, and sometimes you're just going to lose. So
yeah, I mean, listen, that road trip normally is the one that the Flyers take over Christmas, right? When Disney on Ice comes in, and I normally, I would take my daughter down for Disney on Ice, is normally when they would make that West Coast trip. But they went out west early. The fact that they came home, they played really well against those 3 teams. And again, that game against Calgary is a game that, like, was a slog for for almost half the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Calgary scored twice really late to kind of, it was 2-0 for a while, and then they scored 1 empty net, and then they scored 1 right after that. But the goalie play that we're getting, I don't hate. It's really good. They're getting really quality. Even the game tonight that's on. Carter Hart's given up 2 goals, but at the same time has made an insane amount of saves. Some really incredible movement from side to side. I really like what I'm seeing from him in terms of, you're not seeing the long lull of things that are, like, hanging on. When he makes a mistake, you're seeing the recovery, early on in the season. That the one game, I think it might have been opening night when they played Vancouver, and he gives up 2 goals in the middle of the second period, but then goes on to have 6 consecutive periods of shutout hockey. And Martin Jones, not for nothing, but Martin Jones has looked a lot better than he ever looked when he was playing in San Jose.
Dude, you're 100% spot on. Like, honestly, if you asked me, I mean, once again, I feel like we talked a lot about this, like, kind of before it's happened. But, like, we both talked about the key to this Flyers team, no matter what happens this season, is the ability of Carter Hart to show improvement and get back to where he was pre-2020. And
it was always going to be that way.
Let's face it, dude. Without Carter Hart, this team is going to go live and die as far as Carter Hart takes them. And thank you for Christopher. I was wondering what the score was. I haven't even watched it because I was doing the Sports and Metal show, which started at 7, so I didn't get to see any of the game. But I'm glad that they're tied. That's good news. Thanks for
That's always good news.
Update.
Thank you.
But Carter Hart, like, let's be real. Like, if Carter Hart didn't play better, then it wouldn't matter what else happened on this team. And
Right.
you mentioned it. Not only is Carter Hart playing better mentally, but I believe last year the biggest part of his regression, let's call it a regression because it was
It
the
was.
biggest part of his regression was mental, but another big part of it was the fact of was his mechanics and his positional. Like he was playing
Yeah.
so far out of position, like he was just you could tell that he wasn't hitting the angles right on a breakaway, or he wasn't covering the puck quick enough, or on the right angle, on the rebounds. Like it was just he was just off. You could just
Yeah.
tell. And the biggest change that I see is that he's playing positional hockey. Like he's challenging, when there's a breakaway, he's challenging the breakaway. He's not
Yeah.
back on his heels. And
You're seeing him attack.
yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air. Honest to God, we all love Carter Hart. I mean, I'm not sitting here and saying he's going to be the best goalie in the NHL, but I
Right.
believe he has a talent to be, a top 5 goalie in the NHL. He has that
Oh, yeah.
talent. And I think you're seeing, even though the team came out quickly, and remember, when we did our second show, I believe the Flyers were leading the league in scoring at that point.
Right.
It was a small sample size.
Well, you can say that on the overall.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's kind of dropped off a little bit. So if you look at the numbers right now, they're 3.5 goals a game, which is 6th. That's pretty high. They're not first. They're 13th in points, which is goals and assists total at
Okay.
13th. But their shots, which this is surprising me because I was saying that Cam Atkinson brought the shoot first mentality. But would you believe this, that the Flyers are 31st in the NHL in shots? Like, I didn't believe that when I saw that.
Jay, you could have given me 31 chances.
And you wouldn't.
And I probably would have guessed one. I probably would have guessed another team twice before I guessed the Flyers were 31st, because I think what that tells you, Jay, is how drastically different this team is from last year.
Bingo.
And that just seeing it, they may not be getting shots on goal, but their chances,
Quality.
right? And they're all quality chances. And you can see that if you look at their shots versus the goals, right? You're seeing them. I think what we're seeing is them take advantage of the opportunities more frequently, and you're getting better quality opportunities where last year you were seeing 47 passes before you were seeing a shot on goal. And I think that what you're seeing, that shoot first mentality, has translated to Giroux, right? Atkinson has had a direct positive effect on Giroux because you see him now looking for those scoring opportunities, where before, when he was playing with Voracek, it was a pass first mentality.
I mean, it's definitely been a huge, drastic change, and you nailed it. They might not be getting the number of shots, but they're getting quality shots. And not only are they getting quality shots, so they've improved offensively. And then let's get to the defensive side, because remember, last year they were 31st or 32nd in the NHL in defense. They were absolutely terrible. This year, so right now they're 10th in the NHL with a 2.5 goals against. Okay.
Right.
But here's the key stat. They're 9th in the NHL in shots allowed at 264. Last year, they were in the bottom 5. So they are not giving up. Not only are they not giving up shots, they're also giving up less quality shots. So if you put those two extremes and put them together, that's why this team is a better team.
That's where you're seeing the success.
Correct.
Right. You're seeing the success in the pieces that they added on the blue line to be able to make Carter Hart not have to work as hard to be. So now I think what you're seeing now is that the confidence in Carter Hart in net is because he doesn't have to make 45 saves in a night, or he's not trying to make these monumental highlight saves on because the guys are out of position. So I think the guys that they've added on the blue line are allowing Provorov to the stat, Jay, that was most alarming to me. Provorov has not been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal.
Yeah, that's freaking
While
phenomenal.
he's on the ice, they have not given up a 5-on-5 goal. That right there should tell you everything you need to know about the changes that they made on the blue line and how they are directly affecting their ability to be able to not give up as many scoring opportunities in front of Carter Hart.
Dude, absolutely
Yeah.
right. I mean, honestly, like I'm always the guy that, to me, I don't need my defenseman to score a ton of points. Like defenseman, I want my defenseman to make sure that the goalie is protected and to make sure that you're getting the pucks out of the defensive zone as quick as possible. And so you might not be seeing like a guy like, Ristolainen, who, let's face it, I love the guy. I absolutely love Ristolainen. You might not see him putting up numbers and stats, but I will tell you that he's very noticeable on the ice. Now, obviously, his first couple of games back, he was coming off the injury, and he was a little slow to get back. But I will say, I noticed a turning point, and it was actually in a game that they lost. It was in the Calgary game.
Okay.
There was a 20-second, 20-second segment on the ice where he didn't have a stick, but he was like kicking the puck out of the zone. And I believe they were on the penalty kill.
I remember this now.
Kicked the puck out like 3 times, and then he nailed a guy on the boards and like knocked him over. So that kind of play for my defenseman is what this team was severely lacking last year. Like a guy that, kind of gets the team going and makes the goalie know, like, dude, these guys have my back. Like, dude, I mean, you could go down the line. Like Justin Braun is just, he's a role-playing type defenseman who's actually putting up points because he's playing with a guy that can actually, make him look better.
Yeah.
Same thing with you said it with Provorov. Provorov is playing better because he's with a better defenseman. Now, obviously, this team, we haven't really talked about it, which is surprising, but we haven't even brought up his name. But obviously, Ellis, that's a little bit concerning to me that it's starting to get a little bit longer on the end of. It's so crazy. Chris just commented.
Right. Yeah.
When I'm bringing it. You must be reading my mind, Chris. It's starting to concern me a little bit.
Yeah, he played the first 3, right? And then he's been out for the last 7. It started off day to day. Now it's week to week. They're saying he's progressing, but it's not. I think the quote from Vigneault is that he's progressing, but he's not there yet. He won't be available on this road trip. Hopefully, we'll get him back, and he'll be able to join the group. That's what we're hoping. So, listen, I always go back to what my grandfather told me. You can wish in one hand and crap in the other. See which one fills up first.
I don't want them to rush him back, but in the same token, it does get to a point where the fans are starting to question, like, dude, if it's more of a severe injury than you're letting on, then why not just? I mean, I know that they don't discuss it. Kind of like
go get it taken care of, right? It's either listen, we know in hockey, right, Jay? It's either an upper body injury or a lower body injury.
Yeah, one or the other.
They're not going to disclose anything.
But like I said, getting back to the point, bringing in veteran defensemen to pair with younger defensemen equals success.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about a team that last year, it's night and day from last year, because last year you were relying all on youth.
Right.
Minus Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere was, 7 years in the league. So, but you're talking, you had Provorov, Myers, Sanheim, all these young guys. But now you've added Keith Yandel, who, I can't say enough good words about that guy. I mean, same thing. He doesn't put up a ton of points, but he's super huge on the power play, and he's super huge at making the other guys better around him, and it just shows.
That's where that veteran leadership comes in, right? They got a lot of, we go back to those offseason moves that they made. A lot of those veteran guys that they brought in are guys that have been either captains. Put it this way, they've worn letters on previous teams, and that says something. Those are guys that are going to be able to come in and lead be the leaders and be the examples for those young guys. And I had to put this up as the Flyers start overtime against the Penguins right now. Mike bet on the Flyers, so he totally expects the Penguins to score in overtime. Mike, listen, if there's a reason, Mike, why I stopped making picks on your show, because I'm the mush. So
how about this one? I expect G to score on the power play. I mean, I expect G to score the game-winning goal.
All right.
Maybe not on the power play, but
maybe not on the power play, but we'll see.
Maybe they get one.
What so and anything else Flyers related? They've got like we said, they're kind of in the middle of the pack in that Metropolitan Division. In terms of, I mean, we can kind of transition into that top five power ranking. And we can start with one of the teams that's kind of the New York Rangers, Jay. The New York Rangers are 6-2-2. They're but they've won 6 out of the last 8.
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers were one of those teams that I said could be sneaky good this year. Obviously they have a ton of talent. They have a goalie who he's super young, but they have high expectations, and they signed him to that multi-year contract, and so far he's been showing out. Obviously, you look at their balance. They've scored 24 goals, they've given up 22, so they're playing good on both sides of the ice. They're they're scoring goals and they're not giving up a lot of goals, and that's a recipe for success. I think the Rangers are, one of those teams. Like I said, there's a couple of them. I mean, and there's 3 of them. Actually, 4 of the teams that we talked about, that you and I both talked about as being like kind of dark horse teams, are in the top 5 power ranking right now. It's kind of like a little bit nuts, but it's true. The other team that's we already talked about a little bit earlier, is Calgary.
Yeah. They're 6 again. 6. They're 6-1-2. Yeah, their goals for, goals against is like with these top 4 teams that we're going to talk about. You're going to see the goals for and the goals against are going to be drastically different, right? They've got 31 goals for, but only given up 18. Right? They have their goals for is alarming, but that is directly tied into a guy that we've already talked about. That they've got a goalie who is just like red hot right now, in Markstrom.
Yeah, I mean,
the week that he had, where he goes 3-0, has a goals against of 0.33, so he's given up a third of a goal in those 3 games, and has 2 shutouts. On fire.
And in both shutouts, facing more than 35 shots. So you're not talking about your 25 shots.
It's not a cheapie.
You're talking 45 shots the one game. So obviously, you hit on it. That's the recipe for success, and it's no mistake why these teams are where they're at, because they're scoring a lot and they have hot goalies. And unfortunately, like I said, the Flyers are in a tough division. But, we could talk about Edmonton too. I mean, you already talked about it. I mean, the only loss they have is against the Flyers. So
It's
that's
against the Flyers.
for us. I mean,
they're 8-1, 8-1 in their first 9. And I don't mean to bring Mike's point back up, but the Penguins win. Mike is a mush. The Penguins win. It was a wraparound goal. Hart got he had to pad his goalie pad right up against, and it just kind of slid underneath. So, listen, they get a point, which is that's for them to be able to walk away with that overtime loss. I know it's kind of sucks that they got the overtime loss, but they do get the point out of it. Edmonton is just on fire. I mean, they're 8-1. McDavid is insane. The pace of the game when he is on the ice is just different. I mean, I had to look up his stats from last year. Jay, in that 56 games that they played in that abbreviated 2021 season, he had 105 points in 56 games.
That's what I mean.
He just obliterated people.
He's. I mean, it's too early to say it, but he's Wayne Gretzky-esque. He is that good. Like he's a guy. He's a generational talent. Like generational talents do not come around a lot. And then add on top of that, the Robin to his Batman. And I'm going to say his name correctly this time. I said it wrong the first time and got laughed at by Mike. Well, not
okay.
But, he busted my balls.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl.
Yeah.
I think I said it right this time. But he's got 20 points. So he's not a slouch. So you're talking about that line, together is just on fire.
I mean, he's leading the league in points. He's got 20 points in what they played in 9 games.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
When you have, let's face it, teams that have elite talent, that's why those teams are in the top echelon of the NHL. Right. Because there's not that many teams that have elite talent. Unfortunately, the Flyers aren't one of them. Unless Carter Hart becomes elite, or maybe Farabee develops into elite status. But right now, the Flyers don't have what I would consider an elite talent.
No, they don't. And that's one of the things that we've talked about, in the last couple of shows is that, at some point, what is it going to take for them to add one of those upper echelon players that is going to be able to elevate their game? Because right now they have a good team. They have a young core of talent. Some of them that are on the Flyers right now, some of them that are on the Phantoms right now. You can see where some of those puzzle pieces are going to kind of when it all shakes out, where it's gonna go. But you're right. They are missing that game changing player. Do they add a guy at some point? I feel like Chuck Fletcher's not the type of guy who's going to be afraid to make a move, but it's going to have to be something that is going to really accelerate the play on the ice.
Well, let's face it. To get elite talent, you're going to have to give up either elite talent or elite prospects and multiple picks. I don't necessarily feel that the Flyers right now, where they're at, are ready to do that. But here's where I stand with that. And I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves, but we've talked about the fact that the Flyers really will have to overachieve on a drastic level to actually compete this year, especially in the division that they're in. The problem is that, we have to keep our expectations. I mean, listen, I'm a diehard. We're all diehards.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Eagles. I don't want my team to struggle. But in the
No,
same
no, no.
sense, we're realists and we're able to understand where this team is at. I don't
Right.
necessarily think the Flyers yet are ready to compete as of yet. I do think that some unpopular moves may have to happen in order to move forward. I will just leave it at that. And the one guy's name that I know a lot of people don't want to hear, and listen, I love Giroux, but he's a guy that might have to leave for this team to kind of actually step forward. Because I don't believe that with his contract, you can get a guy that's, in that elite status.
Yeah.
Because you got too many guys. Like, you just paid Couturier. Obviously you paid Hart. You have guys that you're going to continue to have to kind of, extend. You're going to hopefully you're going to sign Ristolainen.
Ristolainen, right?
You didn't trade all that, hopefully, for nothing.
I sure as hell hope not.
Well, that's my point. So I
gave up a lot of collateral.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think you have to get rid of Giroux, but I'm just saying that I've heard a lot of people saying they believe Giroux will be gone after this year anyway. It
could be. It could be a piece that they decide to either package or move on from.
I would hate it. I would hate it. But I also think that sometimes for teams to go forward, they sometimes have to make those difficult decisions. And
here's the thing, Jay. I would hate it on a fan level, but I would understand it on a team level.
Like I said, I don't know, dude. All I know is right now, you're mentioning guys like McDavid. We mentioned Eichel. How about Alex Ovechkin? The guy's like the Energizer Bunny.
He reminds me of Yager. Just a guy who is like timeless, never father time. He skates past, around, through father time. He's a guy who just consistently continues to produce year after year after year. He's third in the league in points. He's just a guy who just continues to produce, and he is the catalyst for that team, for that Capitals team.
Most definitely, and that's the reason why I never count them out. You can't, just because of the fact that they have that much scoring punch with Ovechkin. Obviously, to round out our top 5 power rankings, obviously the Panthers at number 2, 8-0-1. They're the team that I kind of hinted at as being the dark horse for the cup. Like, they're that good. Like, yeah. And how about Bobrovsky? Talk about a guy that a lot of people were saying was washed up. I heard quite a few people, even I saw it on Twitter. Oh, Bob's washed. He's washed up. And the guy, he's won the Vezina, a couple times, and he's a guy that, when he gets hot, he stays hot. So
he can still go side to side. He can still keep up with.
Talk about the one that got away.
Man, did we pick the wrong Russian? Holy macaroni. That was one that I never understood the obsession. Who was the guy that they kept?
Nabokov?
Oh
no. I'm sorry. Why did I say Nabokov?
The
guy that they're still paying. Evgeny.
Oh God!
Why are we drawing a blank?
This is like I'm having like a serious brain fart, and it's going to drive me nuts. But I'm literally going to search up Russian Flyers goalies.
Yeah, because I feel like an idiot now too. Usually I'm on top of my game, and I'm like, I'm stumped here, man.
You ready for this name? Ilya Brizgalov.
That's it. I said Nabokov. I meant Brizgalov. Yeah, they're still paying that jerk off.
Oh my God!
Talk about it was a head case.
But they tied their wagon to him, man, and and they let Bob go, and he was young and talented at the time, and that's the move when it happened that I never understood, because you had a guy who was young and talented and cheap and under control.
Could you imagine? That's one of those. You know
He
how
would
you always have. I was thinking about like coming up with a show. What could have been, and
have
Philly sports, and like all the.
Jay, you would have an endless amount of.
Well,
There's an
we should
endless
do it
amount
as
of
a side.
content.
That's another side. That's an idea I've been having floating
Oh
around.
my God!
Maybe we'll do it sometime. But
What could have
what
been?
could have been in Philly sports, and like that's a move that like, could you imagine if we hadn't made that move and now this team was young and we had Bobrovsky and Hart, like, had Hart coming up and then you'd have two guys. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it because it's frustrating. The guys won.
No, but listen, the two teams, Carolina and the Panthers, at the top of the power rankings. The thing that strikes home to me, Carolina's won 9. They've won all 9 games. They have 37 goals and they've only given up 15. So the consistency is that they're getting great goalie play and they have tremendous scoring. We talked about a couple of the guys on the scoring list. There was one that I wanted to ask you about. So there is, all right. So Nugent Hopkins from Edmonton. He is 5th in the league in scoring and hasn't scored a goal. He's got 15 assists. He's got 13 assists. No goals.
It's
but he's
5th.
How are you 5th in the league in scoring and you haven't scored? That was one that I thought was just fun. It just kind of.
Well, I think it's a testament to how good and talented that team is. I mean, not only is McDavid generational, but it just shows when you have a generational player, it elevates the play of all your other players. You mentioned it earlier. Like, the speed and the pace that team plays at is another level.
It's just different.
And it's just exciting and it's fun to watch. And that's what it breeds. It breeds a lot of points.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, they have 3 guys in the top 5. I mean, that's ridiculous.
It's just wild. Just wild. But listen, before we do our 3 stars of the night, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the startling news that came out with what went on with the Blackhawks. I honestly, I don't even know where to begin. My heart goes out to Kyle Beach. Super proud for him to be able to have the platform to speak out and to advocate for people and to let people know that, not just that to shed light on what happened, but to create the opportunity to allow others who may be in the same position, maybe not professional athletes, but who see that as a way to advocate for themselves.
No, I mean, super important. I mean, we talked about this earlier when we were talking about mental health. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And they kind of go directly hand in hand and in correlation. I mean, I'm sure that, Kyle Beach is dealing with, intense, effects from this, traumatic experience. And, kudos to him for, having not only the platform, as you said, but the guts to speak up about it. And because let's face it, like, it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy what I did on this show. It's not easy, for anybody to come out and say that they struggle with something, but it's absolutely imperative and important for others. And, like I said, kudos to him. I think you and I both agree. We've talked about it off air that, the NHL has, kind of, it's a disgrace how they've handled the whole situation from top to bottom.
Yeah,
Not only the Blackhawks, but the NHL in general. I mean,
just
just
in
to
general.
allow it to get to this point is embarrassing. And, I know we don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We obviously wanted to bring it up, but we both agree that, there's a lot that needs to be done in this league, not only in this league, in all professional sports for these kind of things, to make sure, to ensure that, these things don't happen.
Right. To make sure that maybe this elevating this horrible situation forces the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, MLB to really dive deep into background checks on coaches, trainers, any professional staff. Maybe streamlining the platforms for advocacy for, players who might feel pressured not to say anything. I know some of the leagues have, the anonymous hotlines that you can use to be able to advocate for yourself or for others. Hopefully this insanely horrible situation prompts those leagues to really look hard at what they do, not only when these situations happen, but what they're going to do moving forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because no player, regardless of age, status, league, whatever, should ever be put in the same position as Kyle Beach was.
Absolutely not. 100% on point.
So, with that, we're gonna go to our 3 stars of the night. So, at this point, we're looking at anything that was fun, stood out, anything over the course of the last couple of weeks. Jay, you want to your 3rd star of your night?
So you want me to start off this week?
Yeah.
So my 3rd star, my 3rd star is going to be Carter Hart.
Okay.
I think right now, very impressed with, we talked about the importance of him, bouncing back. And I think right now, to me, he's one of the comeback players of the year in the NHL. I mean, from how bad of a season he had last year to where he's at right now and the way he's playing. I mean, obviously, already has a shutout. Mm-hmm. Not that shutouts are, super, they happen a lot more. But my point is he's playing with confidence again.
Right.
You could just tell that he's a different player and he's back to where he was pre-2020. So that's who I have as my 3rd star. My 2nd star, I'm going with Alex Ovechkin.
Okay.
I mean, we already talked about it. Like, the guy is just, beating father time. He's the Energizer bunny. He's a guy that, if I go to a Flyers game, he's one of the game. That's one of the games I want to go to because because of where he's at right now in his career and, the records that he can, still break. I mean, it's just that are in his grasp. It's starting to get real to the point where, if he continues on this pace, that he definitely has a shot at breaking, Gretzky's, all the records.
Gotcha. Okay.
He's my 2nd star. And my 1st star, I think we kind of just spoke about it. My 1st star is Kyle Beach. I mean, the guy for what he, for coming forward and not letting this go any further. I mean, having the courage to speak out, against a tough situation. So that's my 1st star.
Very cool. Very cool. I like it. I like the variety of stuff that you mentioned. My 3rd star, for me, I went with Cam Atkinson, just because I feel like he gave this team the jolt of energy that it needed, and his presence on the ice is giving the other players around him. It's feeding off, and it's kind of splintering off in every direction. And we had put out a poll on Sunday about the coming home off the West Coast trip. Who was the guy that they thought kind of had the most effect on it, and out of all the votes, every vote was for Cam Atkinson.
That's amazing.
So that when a Twitter poll is 100%, when you have 4 options, that should tell you something. The second star of the night is a guy we talked about earlier, Markstrom from the Flames. The week that he had, coming into this week where he had 3-0, 3 shutouts. The save percentage is .989. Just a guy who is playing like he's standing on his head. My first star of the night, Jay, I'm going to go a little bit off the board.
It's okay.
If you have not seen Untold Crime and Penalties, it's a documentary on Netflix. It is about a minor league hockey team called the Danbury Trashers. It's an hour and a half, but Jay, fascinating. It's like a real the guy that owns the team is like a real life Tony Soprano. He's a mob guy who owns a trash hauling company. His son is super into hockey, but gets injured when he's like in high school. The guy ends up buying the minor league hockey team and making his 17-year-old son the general manager. They're paying players under the table. They're dropping bags of cash in their locker if they get into a fight. They sign a guy off an NHL roster when they had the lockout. I mean,
dude,
if you have not seen Crime and Penalties on Netflix, it will be some of the most entertaining hour and a half you'll ever watch, especially if you're a hockey fan. So,
how many episodes is it?
So Crime and Penalties. The Crime and Penalties is the series, or Crime and Penalties is one of the episodes on the Untold series.
Okay.
So it's in the same documentary series as like the Malice in the Palace, which was the thing with the Pistons and Pacers. So it's kind of like a behind the scenes. They go back and forth between like the game action and the interviews of the people involved. But it's part of a larger series. But that one episode, it's an hour and a half. So it's definitely, if you're a hockey fan, it is definitely worth watching. You'll definitely be entertained.
Dude, Donnie, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Drunk on Ice. Again, we're sponsored by our wonderful sponsor, Lots of Rain Watches. If you have not checked them out, go visit them at la-terrain.com. Use our promo code DOB at checkout and go check out some of their cool stuff. We should be back in that third week in November, right before that Thanksgiving time pops up. So look for that episode coming out. You can find this podcast on all your streaming platforms. So go check us out and have a great night and go Flyers.
Go Flyers.